Thanks.
Okay. Right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the executive meeting this morning. The first item on the agenda is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the executive held on the 9th of September, which you have in the additional agenda papers. Members of the executive, can I sign these off as a true record? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Urgent business, item number 2. I don't at the moment have any urgent business to bring forward. Division of the agenda.
I was just sorry, just making sure it's live streaming all right.
I'm just hoping that we don't have to divide the agenda, but we may need to on one of the items. If so, we will go into closed session. Declarations of interest. Members, do you have any personal or disclosable pecuniary interests? And could you tell me what the nature and extent of such interests are, if you have to declare them, please?
No.
No? All right, thank you very much. Right, public question time. Now, we do have some public questions. I think Councillor Baston has volunteered to read out the questions, if you have them there.
I will do.
And I'm answering the first one, and I think Councillor Baldry is going to answer the other one. So if you'd like to start, Councillor.
Right, question 1 is from Caroline Snow. Southampton Council agreed in passing a recent motion to write to local MPs asking them to support the CEE bill, and to the CE Bill Alliance expressing its support and to inform the local media. Have these communications been sent, and what did you write?
Right. Following the meeting of full council on 15th of July 2021, at which a motion was passed to send letters of support for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill to our local MPs, to the CEE Alliance, letters were duly sent on the 23rd of July 2021 to Sir Gary Streeter MP and Anthony Mangnall MP, outlining the debate held at council and requesting their support for the bill in Parliament. In addition, a letter registering the council's support was sent by email, also on the 23rd of July, to the CEE Alliance. In response, a message of thanks was received on the 28th of July from the CEE Alliance. Next question.
Right, we're not taking supplementaries, I don't think.
Well, as Mrs. Snow isn't here, I don't think we can.
Okay. Second question is from Julia Ford. What financial penalties are written into the contract with FCC, and have they been applied? If not, why not?
The deductions are set out in Schedule 5 of the contract, the waste and cleansing contract. The council has been rigorous in calculating the financial deductions, and these are being deducted from the invoices from FCC.
Right, the third question, which is from Julia Saunders. Will the waste collection service run smaller vehicles on a permanent basis to collect waste from small rural lanes?
Larger vehicles are used for efficiency wherever possible. However, owing to the rural nature of the South End, there will always be a need for a number of smaller vehicles on the service.
Question 4, also from Julia Saunders. Will the service run smaller vehicles to access drives for assisted collections? These are often long private drives which are accessible by the smaller oil tankers, for instance. These are the people who need help the most.
There are many long drives in the district, and in most instances, waste is presented at the curbside at the end of the drives. This is to ensure that vehicles do not cause damage to residents' drives, as most are not to a standard suitable for heavy waste vehicles. In some instances, smaller vehicles are used to access the lanes as a part of them for efficiency, or if there is nowhere suitable to leave the waste near the highway. Assisted collections are assessed on an individual basis in consultation with the residents, contractor and the council to make sure the solution is appropriate for particular circumstances.
Question 5 from is also from Julia Saunders. If the answer to question 4 is negative, will they collect on foot and return bins to the same? Bearing in mind, elderly and infirm and disabled cannot possibly carry all these bins any distance.
In fact, of course, the answer to question 4 was not negative, and the response stands the same.
Question 6 from Sue Burkill. Many Shaw Prior residents live on private lanes and are experiencing frequent missed collections. Is it true that private roads cannot be collected by FCC as they are not insured? And if so, as a SHDC vehicle has recently collected and commingled their waste, should they stop sorting it?
The first part of my answer, Leader, is the same as the previous question. There are many long drives in the district, and in most instances, waste is presented at the curbside at the end of the drives. This is to ensure that vehicles do not cause damage to residents' drives, as most are not to a standard suitable for heavy waste vehicles. However, there are a number of private lanes that have been traditionally collected from, and unless the resident has been notified by the council in advance, these should continue to be collected. Due to a number of reasons, including making sure collections take place on scheduled days and congestion at the sorting facility, the contractor has changed the type of some of the collection vehicles and is now collecting recycling in a co-mingled manner from around 15,000 households in the district. The waste is then taken to a more sophisticated sorting facility before being hauled to processing facilities. Whilst it may not currently seem useful for residents to sort their waste in these instances between the recycling containers, it will ensure a quick and smooth transition back once the curbside sort vehicles are operating in these areas again. We therefore ask residents to continue to sort their waste into the appropriate containers. And no supplementaries.
Thank you very much. No, there will be no supplementaries this morning because the question is not present. Thank you very much, both of you. So the next item on the agenda is the board plan. Members, do you have any questions on the board plan?
No.
No?
Yes, please.
Yes, Councillor Baldry.
Just to point out, even though it is not yet on the board plan, I have asked for the trade waste to have a paper presented, and that will be done early next year. But this board plan is just for this year.
That's right, yes. That should appear soon on the next board plan. Thank you very much.
Chairman?
Yes.
Can I just ask, please, with the live streaming, how do residents pick up the link? Because through YouTube, apparently it's not working.
I have checked on the YouTube link, it is streaming on that one.
Yeah, I've just had someone contact me to say they're looking at it through YouTube and it's not working. So that could be better. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So we'll move on to the next item, which is agenda item 7, and it's the draft corporate strategy, Better Lives for All. Now, I'm introducing this paper, and I have to say that I am extremely proud to be bringing this strategy forward. It's a culmination of a huge amount of work, starting with the recovery programme in which all members were closely involved. And as we've come out of the pandemic, I think we've firmed up what our ideas are and what the leading improvements in the district need to be. And so the strategy is the culmination of all these things. It's a very ambitious programme, and the aim is to set the strategic direction of the council for, well, really beginning for the next 30 years, but this is only for the next 3 years. But I hope that it will set South Hams off on a direction which will take it from strength to strength in the future. The outcome sought is for the whole council, members and officers, who need to pull together in the same direction to deliver this ambitious programme of priorities, which has been set by members. There's been consultation which is set out in the paper, and clear responses were that affordable housing, poor transport, and low-paying jobs are the major concerns of residents, and I think they're very much our concerns as well. Interestingly, we recently had a response back from Devon County Council, which was very encouraging because they said how closely our ambitions were aligned to the County Council's ambitions, which will be going through their council in November. So we're really pleased to learn that we're all very much on the same track. Now, one good thing that this new corporate strategy is setting out is performance management. And we've tried to set smart targets or proxy measures for all the actions in the paper. And these will be translated into an updated suite of KPIs. Hopefully somewhere on the website where members can also look at them, which hasn't always been the case in the past. And there will be regular reports on progress. The programme has been fully costed and the sources of funding are set out in section 7. Now, members, do you have any questions on this? I'll take executive first. And if not, I'll move over to other members. Executive members, any questions? No? Other members, any questions? Deathly silence. Well, in that case, I'm going to make one comment, but I will move the recommendations first, as set out in the paper.
Second.
Thank you very much. Okay, so my comment, stroke question, is on the 100 affordable homes a year on page 65 of the agenda paper in the action plan. Now, I have said several times that I think it's very difficult to deliver 100 affordable homes a year, though 300 affordable homes over a 3-year period is a perfectly acceptable ambition. The problem is that homes don't get finished at the end of the calendar municipal year. And therefore, I think we do need to make the ambition 300 affordable homes over 3 years rather than 100 homes a year. Because if we set ourselves up for 100 homes a year, we are setting ourselves up to fail. If we call it 300 homes over 3 years, we are setting up to achieve what we want to achieve. So could we please have that change before it goes to council? Thank you. Now, does anybody else have any comments to make on this paper? Yeah, Councillor Harrison.
I haven't actually got the paper. My agenda only goes to page 53. So where is it? Because it's not on hog.gov.
Yes, it is. It was loaded late. And there are 3 papers loaded on the late papers.
Well, I've just managed to finally get in, and I've got nothing there.
Well, you should have agenda items 1, 7 and 14 on the paper that was published late. And I've certainly downloaded it on Monday, I think it was published. It was Monday, wasn't it? Thank you.
Could someone help Mr. Gardner around for someone to help?
It's not there.
Yes. Do you want to go next door, Jackie, and see if you can get some help with it?
That's fine, I'll sit here, fine.
Okay, all right. And Nathaniel's here, he can help you.
I'll just send you the councillor.
Okay.
You sent it to me?
Yes, it's come to an email now.
Thank you.
Well, we'll give Robertson a moment to see if she can access the papers, but I don't think anybody else has got the same problem. Has everybody else managed to download the papers?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Good. This will, of course, be going on to council for final approval before it sets off on its journey to become a reality. How are you getting on, Councillor?
I think it's there. Let's see. Okay. So I think actually I'll wait till next week because I don't really
All right, okay.
just do a
Well, in that
knee-jerk
case,
reaction. I actually consider these things.
Executive, shall we vote on this now then, please? Are you happy to accept the recommendations?
Unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item is item 8, which is the delivery of electric charging points. I should actually, I didn't have a section for apologies on the agenda, but I should actually say that Councillor Holway is not with us this morning because he's actually on the course. So, Councillor Baldry, I think you're taking this over as a result.
Yes, and we've got both our names on the paper anyway.
You have.
But I am hoping from now on it will be Councillor Holloway.
Yes.
On that, I think this item is a good news story. It follows very quickly upon the previous item, Chairman, because I think it is part of Better Lives for All. It is a contribution to that. It is that we are working in collaboration with Devon and Torbay to introduce a scheme for electric charging points in Totnes and in Kingsbridge. I'm happy to take questions and then I shall move on to bringing out items in the paper.
Has anybody got any questions?
Yes, I am.
We're trying to get there.
Just a minute. Right, the Devon and Torbay residential charge point scheme, right? Is that going to be move any quicker than the other scheme? Tell me, Keith, what was the other scheme called?
Deleted.
Yeah, the Deletti scheme. Is it going to be quicker because the Deletti scheme seems to be taking ages?
I can't answer that. Mrs. Whittaker can answer that bit, but I will say working in partnership can sometimes slow things down. It is unfortunate. It is a good news story, as I said at the end, but you may well define it as a slow news story. Emma, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, so the funding we do need to spend it within a certain time. So we would hope that we need to go through the procurement after we've done this stage today, and that will happen through to December. The installations will then start next year.
This is for the new scheme. What about the Deletti scheme? Because it seems to be going on and on and on, and there are communities in the Southlands that have been promised these electric car charging points, who are quite isolated. And I can think of a town on the River Dart that is very isolated. I was in the visitor centre there and somebody came in and said, where's the nearest charging point? And I had to say it's 13 miles away in Totnes, or you will have to cross the river and go to Paynton. And it just seems a shame that this scheme is taking so long. It's got to be a couple of years now since we started out on this.
So I think we acknowledge that it's taken longer than we've all wanted to, and I think unfortunately being in the partnership that sometimes has disadvantages, but there are a lot of advantages of being in the partnership. We've got a lot of funding for electric charging points that perhaps we wouldn't have the capital funds to be able to provide. And we're managing to install 9 across the Southlands. And with Western Power, we've got to work with Western Power distribution. We've got to work with Scottish Power. We've got to work with legal departments from all the other councils, all the other partners. So it is taking longer than we intended. So the intention is that they start now in the autumn for the installation, which I think perhaps for some of our towns that might be a good time for it to start because it hasn't caused a disruption during the summer, where there will be trenching work that's required, there's road closures for some of the cabling work that's needed. So this is all taking time to process through, and it is disappointing it's taking longer, but I hope in the long term it will have good benefits for the council.
So can you give us some real hope of when all these delivery ones are going to be installed? When will they be installed by?
So they are, Scottish Power are keen to get something in the ground shortly. So we're finalising some of our leases on our car parks this month. So I'll be able to give you a better programme of works in the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I also add, Leader, it is possible, and it's in the paper, if a town council is particularly keen and if they've got land available, they could work up with getting funding jointly with themselves to provide points within their town.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baldry. I've noted what it says at 5.2, and I have in fact started telling my parishes that they can get into this fund if they want to for their own points. Councillor Hawkins.
Emma, can I thank you for all the hard work and effort you do? You do an excellent job, but similar to what Councillor Bastow said, I do find this programme still very, very slow. Some of you will know I've been up to the northwest this week or last week, and I was amazed how many charging points in all their car parks, in probably about 4 different council areas, all neighbouring each other. But you know, hopefully we can progress with this now faster than we have done in the past, and we get these charging points in place. I won't be able to afford an electric car for many years, I'm sure, but it is important, and we do need to progress with this with some urgency. Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins, it is organised by the County Council, this joint bid, isn't it? So
It is.
you could go and give them a...
I can always do that, and I always will too. I can assure you I always will do.
We are fortunate leaders to have two county councillors in the room.
Indeed. Well, I hope they're listening.
Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Baldry,
No,
you want to
no,
go
no,
now?
no,
Sorry,
no.
I'll take Councillor Hopwood afterwards.
No, I was just going to repeat what I said before. If Dartmouth Town Council or anyone else wishes to organise their own scheme, I suggest they get on with it.
Right, Councillor Hopwood, I think we're making comments rather than questions.
Yeah,
but
Oh, sorry, this is a comment just for the Dartmouth members. There is a charging point in Dartmouth at Little Coombe Farm, District Sherman.
Can I just comment? I wasn't talking about Dartmouth, I was talking about the whole of the South.
No, I was speaking, that was what.
I should have said if Dartmouth or any other town or parish council wishes to do so.
right.
But there is one in
Now, look,
Dartmouth.
I think I'd better propose the recommendations, because
Right, so
unless Councillor Smurman wants to ask a question.
Yes, with regard to under 2.5, A38 corridor rapid charging, which runs through a considerable part of Southampton. 2 electric vehicle charging bays in Ivy Bridge are not going to do a lot for the A38. There must be surely plans to provide larger scale electric vehicle charging points along the A38 corridor, and particularly through our Southampton bit. And if there aren't, then I'm looking across at Mr. Brooke, we need to be looking at doing that, because surely, the A38 is the major transport artery which runs through our area, and surely there is a demand for electric vehicles charging points on it.
Mr. Brooke, would you like to answer that question?
Thank you.
Or comment?
Well, comment, yes, question, answer, whatever you got. It was actually, as was then, I was even, who have now been rebranded, I still got the name, I'll be corrected in a minute. They're responsible for that route, and they contacted us because they are asking themselves that exact question. So, how are we going to provide rapid charging on the A38 and the A30 and the A5, etc.? And they identified numerous places that they felt was close enough to the A38 to support that activity, and we obviously were happy to help them deliver against that ambition. So I assume that it's a phased approach, but I agree with you, that the responsible authority for that is Hydrogen as well.
Right, okay.
Councillor Pannell.
Yeah, could I ask Mr. Brooke if he knows whether the Shell garage at South Brent, which is right on the A38, is amongst those suggestions? Because I think working with existing garage operators would be quite useful. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't know the details of. At the time, they contacted us. So it's a national highway. So again, that's who they thought. That's what they contacted us, and they shared with us the other sites, the other authorities that they were having conversations with. So T Bridge.
Could you take that up as a proposal, an idea?
I can try and ask them, yes, but it's privately a garage, so it would be a private conversation between them and the garage, I suspect. But I can try, possibly.
Any questions?
Right, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Yeah, 2 questions. One is, I don't have an electric vehicle, so I don't use these things. So is there a way of actually bringing in money from them? I assume there's a charge on top of the actual car parking space, because obviously we want money to come in to keep these going and maintained. And the second question is, can they be plugged into, or is there a way of plugging in an electric bike? Because there's a huge rise in electric bikes, which I think would be welcoming the opportunity to be charged up in towns.
I'll let Emma give you the technical answer, but before that, yes, we do charge for parking, and also if we're working in partnership with Scottish Power, they take some money out of it as well. Electric bikes, I doubt, but anyway.
Electric bikes we haven't considered just yet, but I have had a conversation with Devon County to ask what they are doing with work with bikes. And I think we're carrying out some survey work that perhaps might look at bikes, electric bikes. But I think I don't know all the technical detail, I'm afraid, with charging bikes. But I think they need a lower voltage than what cars do.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Long.
Chairman, I think this is a great move forward, and I recognise there's a fantastic amount of work that has gone into this. And I think officers and others are going to be congratulated getting it this far. And I know there are obviously power constraints as well in a lot of areas. Yeah. But I was just wondering whether we've got to this stage, whether there is a review and we're looking at other car parks that we own to expand this programme. And we've got a rolling programme, and I know it will take time, so we obviously need to be discussing it now.
So there's constantly different funding streams coming on board that Devon are making us aware of. So there might be an opportunity for us to have a third bid at AUX funding. There's probably other funding in relation to rapid charging. So it's moving all the time. And obviously, being in this partnership, that's what the positive is if we can tap into these funding streams. And of course, we want to expand it in all our car parks. We want to have the ability to be able to increase the number of charges. Obviously, we said allocated 2 spaces per car park at the moment, but as electric cars come, more come aboard and want to park in our car parks, and we have the ability to expand out and increase those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Farr, I think you wanted to comment on the previous question. Sorry.
If I can, a couple of comments if I can, please, Chairman. In terms of the electric bikes, we've recently been working with co-cars who offer that service. We did a survey across the district about the appetite of the network. That works very positive in terms of people's intentions in that regard. So we're working with them, and we'll report back to members when we have a further conclusion on that. But I think looking at the wider picture, one of the key actions within the emerging better lives for all is around developing a proper EV strategy. In the past, MSD have done a brilliant job in terms of bringing all the options that are available, working in partnership. But we need to look at it holistically across the whole of the area, look at how we can really bring additional funding through grant schemes, and have a strategic approach to environment opportunity approach. So that's something that's been developed there. We've already commissioned an initial study. We're quite ahead of the curve, in fact, in terms of our approach to the area, especially for a rural area. But that's a key action.
Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you. I welcome what you say about to climate change, and I think as a council we really are making great inroads. So I think that, and this is part of that package. I just as a thought, you concentrated quite rightly on the 4 main towns, but there are also large South Brent, Woolwell, left behind, and although they're not on direct routes, although South Brent is A38, but I just wonder if there's an opportunity to involve parish councils in all of this, because I know it's part of our strategy, but I don't think it's not down to the council. Would be to start to with parish councils and see if you can involve them and bring them maybe into the funding. I don't know, but it's not done just to the district council. I think sometimes residents don't quite understand that actually doing this because we have our climate change agenda, but we could bring parish councils in as well.
Yeah. I really need to move the recommendations because we haven't moved them yet.
We haven't moved the recommendations.
No, let's move the recommendations.
Let me move the recommendations at the top of the paper. We seem to have launched into the debate in there.
Exactly.
So just the recommendations. Highlights are a collaborative agreement with Devon and Torbay residential charge point scheme. approve the potential sites as listed in 1.3 and then enter a lease with the appointed supplier for a 10-year period. I move.
Thank you. I'll second. Right. Okay.
Right. Councillor Hopwood has made many of the points I would have made in my introduction. This is a South Ham scheme. It is part of our programme for climate change and biodiversity. It is part of Better Lives for All, but it should not be South Hams on their own. It depends on having sites. Councillor Smurden has mentioned along the A38 corridor. It would require us to have sites along that route, which we haven't got, if we were going to do it. But we can certainly be encouraging parish councils. And when I go to buy my petrol for my car, I go to a garage. Why can people not go to garages to find electric charging points? I don't know the answers to this, but I suspect Tesco's at Lee Mill will have electric charging points if it hasn't got them already. That is on the A38 corridor. So I would encourage all organisations, and commercial and public sector organisations, to look for potential sites to increase the network.
Thank you. I don't spend a lot of time hanging around on the car park in Ivy Bridge, I have to admit. But I'm told the charging points there are not frequently in use. And Emma's confirmed that by shaking her head. So you do wonder what the need is. I recognise there is a need, and we need to provide, points need to be provided, but I think Councillor Baldwin makes a good point. We don't sell petrol and diesel, so, why do we have to be the leaders in charging points?
But we are.
Well, we've been made to be, I think, is the right thing to say. And a lot of the problems associated with putting in points is actually the electricity supply. And I think the electricity supply is increasingly going to be a huge problem moving forward, because the demands on the electricity supply are going to be greater and greater as gas boilers are outlawed, as electric cars are about the only way of getting about. So I think, there really is a lot more to this infrastructure than just the council bidding into schemes. And it's a much more complex question than just the council bidding into schemes. So whilst we can develop strategies and do everything we can, I think it's only going to be a drop in the pool of getting the thing really off the ground. And it's often things that are completely beyond our control that are preventing them from happening. Is that a hand, Councillor? Yes, okay.
Comment. Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the issues is the link, and we're waiting for Hinkley C to come on stream, for that link between our regional grid and the national grid to be improved. That's my understanding, and that's been the problem with actually more renewable energy supplies to be brought onto the grid as well. It's an issue in the grid, but my hope is that we will actually see how we can improve regional grids to be more independent, so that would mean we wouldn't be so dependent, and certainly I don't want to be dependent on nuclear power.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, I think we're broadly in the same place on this. We certainly welcome this project, but we recognise that we probably aren't as far down the track as we should be, but there are difficulties in actually providing these points. I think one of the things that could be done is, and I think the government are on the way to insisting on this, that all new properties built have the ability for electric cars to be charged somewhere, either in the garage or outside the property. Councillor
Chairman, just one last thing to say is that I don't think a lot of people realise that actually you can just charge an electric car by plugging it into an electric socket. So we need to remember that as well. It's not always people need to go to car charging points. They could just put it into a 3-pin plug.
They can, but if people haven't got on-site parking.
Yes.
Oh no, I realise that.
It's another system to deal with that problem. So, okay, so if we've got no more questions, let's move to the vote on this. Sorry,
just a couple of points on what's been said already, and it's probably not the correct thing to say, but I find it surprising that Glanville's Mill at Ivy Ridge has been regarded as being on the A38 corridor, because it's a long route off the A38 and back on again from there. And confirming what you said, Leader, the local member has told me they've yet to see anybody plugged in there.
That's what I was working on.
They go there more frequently, yes.
Right, okay, shall we move to the vote then? Ms. Farmer?
Could I just ask one more question based on what
Yes.
Councillor Baldwin said? Are we keeping this is for Emma really, are we keeping a record of actual charging, like how many people have actually used the charger?
So the Ivy Ridge one has had, since the installation of sort of April, before, we've had 602 sessions at Ivy Ridge. So at the moment, there's been a slow increase, and it averages, in August, the average was 6 sessions per day.
Okay,
Going back,
Thank you, Emma,
and
for
going,
having that at hand.
so that's 3 per point, because there are 2 on there. Right, okay.
and going back to what Councillor Hopwood said, some of the original houses built in Sherwood haven't even got power points in their garages.
Well, that's commercial purpose for you. Right, okay, thanks, let's move to a vote then. Everybody in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. Right. So the next report is the expenditure. Thank you very much. The expenditure of Section 106 contributions. Councillor Dustin, this is your report.
And if you've read this report from start to finish, you'll realise that it's a brilliantly put together report. It really is outstanding. And I've got to thank Lisa, Cassandra, and particularly Alexa for putting this fantastic report together.
Alexis, she's not an anthem thing. Alexa.
If you say Alexis,
Turn yourself off.
That's what happened.
Sorry, Alexa.
Gets this information from.
Section 106 contributions and numbers. This report provides details of Section 106 contributions received by the Council and how it is proposed to spend these contributions to enable the delivery of affordable housing, open space, sport and recreation and community facilities. The Section 106 contributions held by the Council currently total just under 5.9 million, and these have been split into thematic delivery plans of better lives for all. The Section 106 deposits have been colour-coded to indicate progress with spending the contribution. Green means there are clear plans for spending it. A grant offer has been made to a parish council or a relevant organisation. Orange is where part offer has been made to a parish council. Sorry, orange is where part, but not all of the contribution is committed for spend. Red is where projects are yet to be developed. In 2019-20, the council spent just under 1 million of the Section 106 deposits on projects such as new employment units at Ermington Mill and play areas throughout the district. This report actively encourages all members to continue to engage with the town and parish councils to facilitate the expenditure of Section 106 contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions on this paper? Councillor Bastian, would you like to move the recommendations?
I will move the recommendations on the agenda. There are 3 recommendations and I'll move those.
Thank you, Councillor Bastian. Now, do you have any comments on this paper?
Somebody going to second it?
Oh, sorry, I'll second it. Yeah, sorry. Councillor Hawkins.
Can I just comment? I worked well with the officers on our S106 funds for open space and leisure and recreation, and I'm delighted that on a regular basis there is a considerable investment going into our open spaces and play areas. In my own patch, my county patch, Malden has got the most fantastic new play area, which was slightly controversial at the time, but that cost over £100,000. It's a fantastic facility, and there's investment going in Dartington, Ivy Ridge, Modbury, all over the South Hams, and it really does help our communities with fantastic state-of-the-art play areas. And I just thank all our officers for all the hard work and effort they do to provide these with our parishes, which is the most important thing, and our communities and our residents. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to second that to all the officers concerned. Thank you very much for all your hard work. And I think we are now in a position where members are quite clear what's going on and what the position is in each member's ward. And I think we all need to remember what Section 106 contributions are for. And we can only ask for them where they are seen as a requirement to make the planning that is going to happen acceptable to the present residents, because the houses being built are going to put a strain on the present facilities. Now, this is a wonderful opportunity for parishes, and in many instances does make the development more acceptable. But I think all the more reason why members need to work closely with the council to get these monies spent so that those facilities become a reality for the parishes concerned. They've taken the development, they therefore deserve what they've earned, if you like, by it, by way of better facilities. So I would urge all members, please, and I'd actually like something to go out in the bulletin or something to remind members that this is actually one of their obligations, to make sure that their parish councils put together projects so that this money can be spent as soon as possible. Alexis is doing a fantastic job and really gets things moving as quickly as she can, but she does need projects to move on. And therefore, members, you all have an obligation to see that this money gets spent. And I know I'm as guilty as anybody, because we've got a lot of money in Salcombe that hasn't been spent over the years. But I really had to twist the town council's arm to get the play park built in Courtney Park, and it's a bit the same on the rest of it, as I'm sure Councillor Long will appreciate, but we keep chipping away at it. Okay, so are there any further comments or questions? Because if not, we'll move to the vote on this one. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I just want to thank the council and Alexis for the wonderful way they dealt with the Mudbury play park. It's a wonderful innovation for Mudbury, and it's the uptake on use is threefold more than it was before. And Alexis very kindly came along to the opening, and it was wonderful.
Good.
So thank you all very much.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I noticed that in Ivy Bridge, there's an allocation of monies for air quality modifications under the 106. One thing that's constantly a problem with Dartington and Totnes is the air quality, which is a recognised air quality area that needs management, and there's rarely any money to do anything to make it any better. So is that something we could look for now in the 106 agreements for the applications coming into Dartington, which will surely make that air quality worse?
That is something we need to take up with France.
Okay.
And as far as I know, I think the problem in Ivy Bridge has been mitigated by taking the parking off the road into Ivy Bridge and putting it where the old fire station was. Councillor Bastow, can you enlarge on that?
I wanted to say about Totnes.
Yes.
County have got an important part to play in the Q&A because they control that situation. And as far as the highway is concerned, they need to make some adaptations along that highway to make it better for everyone. They're the major player in this. But I accept what you say, some Section 106 money that was available, and you felt it was that important to the residents of Totnes as opposed to other projects. That's for Totnes and Dartington to speak about, and I think you do need to speak to county about what road improvement. I mean, there was one road improvement which would have made quite a bit of difference, was by the railway station and the crossing there, the pedestrian crossing. That was a subway. There would be no car stopping with the exhaust coming out. And things like that you could do along that road, but they are expensive, I'm afraid.
Can I come back on that? I mean, as you know, we've got a green travel coordinator position now in Totnes, which looks at the district. It's not just Totnes, so it's looking very closely at that. But and as the county councillor which includes Totnes and Dartington, I bring it, I think probably Jonathan would agree, pretty well every meeting. And the cry constantly is no money. They say Southampton needs to look at it, and that's actually in their minutes. So it's like, well, so I'm looking at this, and I'm actually, there's not an awful lot. I mean, the air quality money is only 5,000 or something for Ivybridge, so that's not going to exactly buy a huge amount of change. But it's, it's just a sort of contribution of intent, and I think that's what we really need to see, something shifting. And I absolutely agree. I mean, it was myself that did all the public consultation about that subway, and that was 8 years ago. But, Devon County Council says the problem is the railway network. We had a rail network guy came out and he said, fantastic, just need to move the signal box. That was happening last year. Did I get any replies to all my inquiries about the signal box moving? So and COVID, of course, has been blamed for everything, and Brexit on top of that. So it is a bit of a no-win situation. But meanwhile, the air quality declines, and I've got people with asthma who I think are, in quite a serious position.
Councillor Hawkins.
I was just going to comment. I remember being in a meeting with Councillor Hodgson some 3, maybe 4 years ago now, trying to talk about that subway project, which seemed to be perfectly sensible as a scheme that could run forward quite quickly. But I fully support what you want to do there.
Yeah, but computer says no all the time, doesn't it?
Can I get Mr. Clark to comment on the air quality?
Yeah, indeed. Certainly at the moment, the work that you mentioned, Chair, about the Ivybridge, that has seen an improvement. There's also been changes where council work with us as a landowner. So the air quality management area is something that's under review. The Totnes one is based on exceedances in the top part of Totnes up on the hill coming in. So it's not in the central area. The underpass is something that has been considered. Obviously, at the time, financially, it was not considered to be viable. And at the moment, in terms of 106s and planning applications, the air quality management area is very clear. As for any future developments in the area, they have to make a contribution by supporting green travel plans or similar. Dave Sexton is our lead officer for that area. Council, I'm more than happy to have a word with him and have a conversation about how we can see if we can really bring any more money to support the ambition of getting rid of that air quality management area.
Okay, thank you. Because if I may just come back, I mean, in here is applications for under Great Court Farm for play areas, which is fabulous. Fortunately, it's a fairly elevated position, but that's very close to the area that we've got the air quality problem. In Bridgetown. So it's, you want to put children out, mopping up all that polluted air.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. If we've got no more comments, I'll move to the vote on this one. Everyone in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next paper, which is the medium-term financial strategy for the 3 years 2023 to 24 and 25. So I'm introducing this paper. The medium-term financial strategy has been prepared over a 3-year timeframe to 24-25 to dovetail to the same timescales as Better Lives for All, the new corporate strategy. On the 7th of September, the Chancellor announced a 3-year spending review for 22-23 to 24-25, and the Chancellor has invited consultation responses by the end of September, to which we will be responding. The financial modelling in the report shows the forecast budget gap for 22-23 is in the region of £79,000, which is 0.8% of the Council's net budget of £9.7 million. The budget gap the year after, 23-24, is a further £536,000, with a further budget gap of £355,000 in 24-25. Now, recently we've had scary figures like that in the future, and Mrs. Butler has always been able to trick and they've disappeared when the time came. But I think that there's more risk that those are likely to be real budget gaps for a number of reasons, but the principal reason will be the business rate reset when that happens. Section 3 of the report sets out the assumptions for the financial modelling, such as that of the business rates baseline reset, which is now being deferred until 23-24, with no negative revenue support grant in 22-23. It's assumed that the limits for council tax increases will remain at the higher of £5 or 1.99% for 22-23 onwards. A business rate pooling gain of £300,000 has been modelled for the next financial year, 22-23. No permanent reductions to the council's income streams, such as ferry income, car parking income, planning income, etc., as a result of the COVID pandemic, have been built into the base budget for 22-23. The report recommends adopting the principle of using the business rates retention reserve to smooth out the anticipated volatility in business rates income over the next 3 years. And I have to say that I think this is an extremely sensible way of proceeding. I wouldn't normally recommend dipping into reserves to fund a year's income, but I think in this particular case, where the business rates reset is going to make such a jerk on a real jerk in our income stream, then I think this is a very sensible way of proceeding. And after all, that's what that reserve is there for, to smooth over these differences that we're going to experience. Now, a further budget update report will be presented to the Executive in December, which will contain any details announced by the government on the 3-year spending review. So I think I need to remind you that this is very much based on what we think is going to happen at the moment. And Mrs. Buckle seems to be very good at reading the minds of ministers, but she can't guarantee that she's going to get 100% right. But I think we will have a better idea of what's going on in December. So I'd like to thank you for writing this very full report, which I think gives us a very good, as good an idea of what is going to happen as we can have at the moment. So I'll ask if there are any questions on the report, first of all. Anybody got any questions? Or has it stunned you all into silence because it's such a complete report? Right, if there are no questions, I'm going to move the recommendations on page 39 and 40. There are 4 of them. I probably don't need to read them all out because you've got them in front of you.
Secondly.
Secondly, thank you very much, Councillor Bastow. Does anybody want to comment on this report? I think my only comment is that there are those scary numbers in years 2 and 3, and those are more likely to be a reality than they have been in the last few years. But we do have this business rates retention reserve to smooth them over if we need to use it. But Mrs. Buckle is very good at being white rabbits.
I was going to say that Mrs. Buckle will find someone again over the hand. Like
yes.
Back in the circus.
That isn't big enough, but anyway. Yes, Councillor.
No, sorry, only a frivolous comment. I think I want to disassociate myself with any suggestion that Mrs. Buckle can read the minds, devious minds of ministers. She hasn't got that sort of mind.
Right.
She's worth a lot of money if she can.
Right.
Well, the ministers,
she is worth a lot of money.
But the ministers are constantly changing.
Yes. So, well, thank you very much, Mrs. Buckle, for such a complete report. Because you can see it's left us all speechless. So I think we'll pass to the vote if there are no more comments on it. Is everybody happy with the report?
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mrs. Buckle. So the next item 11, is month 4 revenue budget monitoring. Councillor Bastow, this is your report.
Thank you, Lee. This is the first revenue monitoring report of this current 2021-22 year and covers the first 4 months of the financial year to the end of July, 31st of July 2021. The report asks the Executive to note the forecast income and expenditure variations for the year and the overall projected surplus of £92,000. This equates to 1% of the total budget of 9.677 million. An analysis of the projected variances against budget are shown in Table 1 on pages 68 and 69 of the agenda. I am pleased to say that the majority of the fees and charges income have shown signs of recovery in the year. And at this early stage in the year, we are estimating additional car parking income of £165,000 and Dartford Lower Ferry income of £102,000. In addition, employment estates income is anticipated to be over budget by £80,000. And this additional income has been built into the big base budget for 22-23. The position of the main income streams for the period 1st of April 2021 to 31st of July is summarised in the table on page 73 of the agenda. Members will note that planning income is looking very healthy for the first 4 months of the year, with additional income of £280,000 being received. This relates to one-off large planning applications, mainly in respect of Sherford. The Planning Improvement Plan report on the executive agenda recommends that this additional income is utilised to fund additional temporary staffing costs in the planning year 21-22. Finally, regarding the waste contract, members will note that additional costs of £240,000 have been included in the revenue monitoring report for the year. This is a ballpark estimate of the cost the council experienced in 2021 due to the delay of the Devon Line service, and this figure has been used in the absence of any firmer figures at this early stage of the year. The council is continuing dialogue with its waste contractor, and figures for the waste service will be firmed up in the future budget monitoring reports. Budgets will continue to be closely monitored over the coming months, and quarterly update reports will be brought back to the executive.
Thank you, Councillor Bustone. Executive members, do you have any questions for Councillor Bustone on this report? Other members, do you have any questions? Councillor Bustone, would you like to move the recommendations?
Move the recommendations as set out in the executive agenda.
Happy to second. Right, so we'll move into the debate. Does anybody want to make any comments on this report? Yes, Councillor
I'm
Hawkins.
going to be provocative, and I hope the leader will accept this. I would just like to thank all the staff on the lower car ferry for all the hard work and effort they've done this last summer. They have done a fantastic job. I don't think they've missed one phone service, which is a call on other services we can provide, while contractors do. They have done a fantastic job under really hard circumstances, because there have been so many tourists and residents, and our residents have really thanked you.
I'd like to add to that. It's really good to see the ferries looking so smart after their refits too.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Councillor Weston.
Yeah, to carry on that theme, I was speaking to Cam at Slocum Harbour Authority yesterday about another matter totally divorced from that, and we did get round to the conversation about the lower ferry, and he was very complimentary about the men that currently work there.
No, I must say, I think they're running a really good service there, and they are. Every time I've been on the ferry, they've been very pleasant. You know, taking you to the car and all the rest of it. You know, they're really quite nice and friendly.
They've always got a smile, always friendly.
Yeah, they have. It's a pretty efficient turnaround, considering the constrained circumstances both ends of that ferry. Right. Any further comments?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. We were going to, on the new waste system, we're going to save circa 200,000. Now, is this extra cost that cost us because of delay in bringing the vehicles forward and everything else and storing off, is that going to be offset? So does that look like it's going to end up as even, or where do we stand on that one?
Even's answer.
Oh, you got it.
No, I wasn't wondering, I was going
I'm
to
going to ask Mrs. Buckle.
So was
I'm going to say that I understand that because of the delay for the introduction of the aligned service, that will be a cost which we will be asking FCC to pay. It is on the list.
Yes, there was the initial delay, which was caused by COVID and the vehicles not being delivered on time. That meant we had to postpone it by at least 6 months, wasn't there, Mrs. Buckle? But I think the delays since have been FCC's delays in not rolling out the service as per the timetable that we had set with them for rolling out that service.
But some of those costs were COVID related. So, for example, the fact that the vehicles weren't able to be delivered in time by September, the fact that the depot wasn't ready in time, those were COVID related costs. So we would need to look and see which of those costs are COVID related and which are, which are outside of the remit of anyone's responsibility really. So some of those things were COVID related in terms of the delay.
I think Councillor Smith.
With regard to recycling, once again, in the report here, item H relates to recycling income and gives quite a bit of a breakdown on recyclables, etc. But it says it's anticipated to, with regard to higher quality materials. Now, a lot of the stuff that's going on.
Can we leave this until we get to the waste debate, Councillor Smith, please?
Okay,
it is on. It is about the revenue.
It is part. Okay, fair enough.
Well, I think we probably would like to keep the waste separate from this. One thing I would like to thank Mrs. Bennett for is, and all her team, is the absolutely rigorous way in which they have returned the Delta forms to government to claim anything that we were able to claim that was COVID related, because that really has helped to keep us in a pretty healthy financial position. So in spite of the emergency budget we passed in, well, this time last year, actually we've come out of this pretty well in spite of all the difficulties. So thank you very much for looking after us so well, and your team. Okay, so if we, apart from waste, if there aren't any more questions, and we'll go into that in the waste, on the waste paper. Are you happy to move to the vote? Is everybody in favour of this paper?
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is also yours, Councillor Bastone, it's the capital programme monitoring paper.
Thank you, Lee. This is our standard capital monitoring report, which is presented to Executive once a quarter. This report covers it 1st of April 2021 to 31st of July 2021 and asks the Executive to note the content. The report advises members of the progress on individual schemes within the approved capital programme, including an assessment of their financial position. All of the capital projects are within their approved budget, with the exception of Dartmouth Ferry Workshop, which is currently overspent by £31,816. The report requests members' approval to fund this overspend from the capital programme contingency reserve. All other capital projects are within the existing capital budget approved by members. A summary of the capital programme is shown in Appendix A. The award of contracts is subject to the Council's procurement rules on competitive tendering, and therefore the allocated budget is commercially sensitive.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bastone. So could you, members please note but not to refer to that appendix unless you really need to, in which case we may have to go into closed session. Members of the Executive, do you have any questions on this thing? No? Right, other members, any questions? Councillor Bastone, would you like to move the recommendations?
Yes, so I'll move the two recommendations, which is to note the content of the monitoring report and recommend to Council to fund the overspend of £31,816 on the Dartmouth Ferry Workshop from the capital programme contingency reserve.
Thank you you very much, Councillor Gladstone.
Seconded.
I'll second it. No problem. I think in the context of the works that have been done to the very workshop at Dartmouth, the overspend is actually not that surprising, because I think it wasn't clear at the beginning exactly what was going to be involved in the works, and I think that was always the case, wasn't it, Councillor Gladstone, as I recall, on this project. Councillor Gladstone? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
I have no misgivings about it, seeing the profit they've made this year.
No, well, absolutely, no, I would agree with that. Councillor Hopwood, did you have a question?
Yes. Question. Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it a question? Yes, it is a question. 3.3 affordable housing update. It says affordable housing proposals 2013/14. So does that mean that all these schemes were first mooted in 2013/14? And if it, well, no, I'll let you answer that first. Just as a simple yes. Is it?
Strangely enough, Councillor Hopwood, that was a question I asked Mrs. Buckle before we started the meeting, because I thought that's strange. But I'll let Mrs. Buckle explain, but it's when we started that affordable housing scheme. But I'll let Mrs. Buckle update further on.
Yes, that's correct, and thank you, Chairman. Yes, the affordable housing proposals did first start in 2013-14, and going down further in the table, there was an annual budget of 230,000 which was being set aside, and some of that came from, it was to do with the second homes. We were getting a contribution from Devon County Council. So it is quite a historic scheme, but that is the date that it first started, 2014.
Thank you. And just moving on from that, if I may, so the answer is really yes. Just all these schemes take so long to bring to fruition for affordable homes, and affordable housing is so important in the South, well, in any area to be fair, but especially in the South Hams, because we have so many second homes. And I just wonder what we can as a council do. I know we're in the Better Lives for All. There's a piece on affordable housing and housing, and so it should be, and it will remain one of our top priorities within this council, as it always has been. But it's just such a shame that you, after 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, you just still haven't got anywhere with some things, and it grips me, because we've got people desperate for homes and schemes that just aren't still being delivered after such a long time. What can we do to just kick someone up the backside to get these, well, whatever the wording is, it's probably not the correct wording, but we need to get these schemes going for these people.
Councillor Hopwood, I think you recognise that even commercial schemes take a long time to bring forward. You would reckon 5 years from the first outline application coming in to reserve matters being signed off and ready to go. And I think one of the things we need to look at is modular builds, which can be cheaper and much quicker to put up once you've got a slab and the services in. And I think that's something we may well be looking at in future, especially to service the lack of one-bedroom accommodation that we need for homeless people and, well, in fact, and a lot of other people, not just homeless people, because we do have a lack of one-bedroom accommodation in the district. So I think that's something we will be looking at. But I agree with you, it is very frustrating that they're taking so long to come forward. But I'd also say that I don't think that we are peculiar as a council in that. In other words, I don't think we're having any different problems from other councils do in bringing forward schemes like these. It is very frustrating.
And I didn't want to suggest for 1 minute that we were alone in this slow vote China thing, but it's just so frustrating as members.
And part of it is a lot of the amount of consultation required and bringing the community along with you and all the rest of it. And often it's because there are slightly controversial sites as well, and it is very, very difficult to do it, but also immensely frustrating because every year you wait, the prices go up like mad, particularly this year.
Thank you.
So, okay, so has anybody else got any comments on this report? Have you moved the recommendations? You have, okay.
You second it.
I seconded it, it's not, I'm getting lost in the number of papers we've done. Right, if nobody else has got any comments or questions on this, shall we pass to the vote?
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. Right. So the next paper is the planning improvement plan, which is mine. Now, this has been long awaited, and I'd like to thank Mr. Clark right at the beginning for taking this over from Mr. Molyneux, largely due to the problems we've been having with the waste collection. So Mr. Molyneux has been busy on other things. And so Mr. Powell has set his mind to this. And the purpose of this report is to update members on the progress of the Development Management and Planning Enforcement Review and to seek adoption of the Planning Improvement Plan, known as the Plan, as resolved at Executive on the 21st of April 2021, and minute E87/20 refers, and to secure a recommendation to Council to approve the use of the additional planning income to cover the cost of temporary staff within the Development Management Service. We have, all of us members, from time to time, encountered resident or agent complaints about delays in taking timely decisions on planning applications. The reasons for this are many and complex, but a lack of sufficient planning officers certainly doesn't help. The surplus fees earned over the year so far enable us to redress this problem by employing some extra officers to help clear the backlog and to keep up with new applications as they come in. Additionally, changes proposed in the proposed improvement plan should help to iron out some of the problems which have been occurring. We need to be far tougher on agents who are not doing a good job for their clients. By continually helping them out, we're often contributing to the impression that the planning department is being slow in determining applications, rather than making it clear to these agents' clients that their agent is not doing an entirely efficient job for their client. I'm very keen that the registration progress in particular should not get bogged down with incomplete applications, but that they should simply be returned to the applicant or agent to be resubmitted once they are complete. It's not fair that these applications should effectively be holding up the more diligent ones that are complete. This and other actions in relation to pre-application advice and agents forums is set out in section 4. There will be a new memorandum of understanding with parishes and town councils, and also a new customer charter, so that the obligations on both sides are clear, and all in the interests of working towards better and more timely results. Changes in the way legal, other internal constitutes and enforcement work with planning should also help to reduce blockages in the system. I'm really grateful for the invaluable advice we've been receiving from Pete Ford, formerly of Plymouth City Council, but now with PAS, the Planning Advisory Service, and the work he's done with officers to arrive at a deliverable set of actions that will build on good practice and address weaknesses in the system. There will be 6 monthly updates on the progress of the implementation of the plan. Members, do you have any questions on this report? Thank you, Councillor Basto. Yes, and thank you, because you started this off, didn't you, this review? And so thank you for that. If you don't have any questions, oh yes, there is. Councillor Hodgson, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, one thing that I'm on the planning committee on and off really for 10 years now, and one thing that is a constant bone of contention, and I hear it also from members of the public as well as parish councils, is the website is not as good as it used to be. And I think that would be really useful to see this in, if we're going to take things forward and we want to make things smooth and really user-friendly, the way that the website works in the sense of when you actually go into a planning web portal, the way the documents are actually laid out. So there's one very simple thing. When you clicked on a document, it changes colour the same as it does on a website. And that does make a difference. If you're going through the best parts of 300 documents, you want to know which ones you've looked at, because the other thing is they're not that well labelled. To be clear, it just says document X, and you look at it compared to what you've actually seen on the listing. So you can't make a direct comparison. So it's actually, if you're really working hard through a whole series of documents around a planning application, it's quite difficult to really, without actually renaming them as they come off, you can't really see where you are. And I've heard that through from others as well. So I would ask that we look at how the the loading up of documents works, and also the efficiency around that, because there have been some cases where quite important documents haven't really come forward very quickly before the development management. And I think that, it might be the detail, but the devil sometimes is in the detail of making it helpful. And if I may just add on to that, it's not mentioned on here, but it is more of a county matter. But the highways officer comments are not always very clear. If it's just an arrow on a sheet, I think there should be something that just says no comments, or the way we ask our parish councils, support, object, or no comment, rather than just like an arrow on a sheet, which many people just don't, if they're only doing their planning once, they don't understand. And my final point, if I may, is in terms of meeting with the officers around the enforcement matters. It's myself that's been asking time and time again, and I still don't seem to be on the list of people to meet. And I would just like to have if I could just find out separately to this, when we're supposed to be having that. But otherwise, I welcome this.
On that.
Otherwise, I welcome it.
If you get in touch with her, I'm sure she'll organise a meeting.
Yeah.
I agree with you that the highways lists are totally impenetrable, and the arrows don't work, the links don't work. There is a new planning system coming online sometime in the autumn, which should be much easier to operate. As for the names of the various documents, that is due to the way that the agents are uploading them, because they are uploaded straight onto the portal by the agents, and it's up to the agents to name them. So that is certainly an action we can take to the agents for, and that is, again, agents just being lazy and not labelling their documents properly. So that doesn't depend on us, that depends on them, because they come straight through to the front of the house when they're scrutinised by the process people and pushed through. So that is up to the agents, not up to us. But I don't know what the new website is going to look like, but certainly if it looks like some councils, all the plans will be separated out from the comments and all the rest of it, and the statutory consultees to be separate, and it should be much easier to follow than the present system, which I agree is particularly annoying for huge applications when we've got sort of 300 comments coming in a day. It's really, Councillor Long.
Chairman, I welcome this report, and I think we've all had a lot of experience in planning and sort of issues around.
Sorry, are we still on questions?
I think we are.
Sorry, we're still on questions.
Well, I was going to ask a question.
Okay,
just a welcome.
Okay.
I'm pleased to see that planning and such enforcement roles are being addressed. Will obviously this be a living document and under constant review, and also taking in those functions such as heritage, trees, landscape, who obviously have a large impact within the sort of strict area of planning? Will they also come under a review and look at the roles and impacts on planning and capacity levels there?
I think as far as capacity goes, that will be part of the consideration of capacity review in general. And I think there is a section in this report that says that the enforcement review is not as up to date as we would have liked it to be. But that's largely due to the change in personnel in the enforcement department, and a further report will come forward on enforcement.
So we will see additional elements of the planning service.
There's an additional report coming forward on that. And then there will be 6 monthly reviews of how the improvement plan is working and where we've got to on it, and that will come forward to European scrutiny, I think, for them to look at. So I think, there is enough in there for you to be able to keep up and request that certain things are looked at and come forward.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, so if I've got any more questions, I'm going to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Buston has seconded, thank you. And now we'll move to any comments. Councillor Baldry.
I've got several comments. Everyone is welcoming this report, but I have to say, we would like it to happen much more quickly than it is. It is going very slowly. The patience of members of the public and of members is wearing thin. And you have mentioned major schemes where the agents have not been coming back. But I find it very hard to defend to members of the public where they have a small application in, where they are now 3 months behind the anticipated completion date. I think we probably have problems with officers, we have problems with turnover in officers, we have problems with officers being sick. But it's very hard to defend when someone has got a simple scheme in for a pagoda, for example. It was due to be completed in June and still not completed. More than that, the bit that worries me most is planning enforcement. And I find it very hard, and reading the report, there are suggestions in it, are very hard to defend to the public when planning enforcement is not done more speedily. There are a number of cases in my ward which have been going on not for months but for years. Mention is made in here of meetings with ward members. I haven't got a date yet, but why should I have it ahead of everyone else? But historically, I've had 2 or 3 meetings with the then enforcement team where my co-councillor Dan Thomas and I have made suggestions for changes and nothing happens. And I hope this time, if we have meetings where a ward member, for example, says this case can be closed and move on, it doesn't still appear on the enforcement case 6 months later. I am getting impatient.
Councillor Baldry, I think we've all experienced that. And thankfully, once the problem has been recruiting a level 4 officer to do the enforcement section. I think we've got a contract officer there at the moment who's helping to sort things out. But if you want to have another meeting, if you get in touch with Helen Smart, she will organise that. And Helen, I have to say, is being extremely competent kind of overseer of enforcement at the moment. And things are moving along, but they're moving along faster with some officers than with others. I think some of us haven't been given the names of the new officers yet. And again, in the starters and leavers, it would be helpful to, so perhaps that's again something to be looked at in the bulletin so that we can be told who the new enforcement officers are. And if we have been told, be told again, because it may not have registered with some of us. And I think the other thing that we need to have is the monthly enforcement list, because we haven't had one since the end of July. And it's quite hard to keep up. I've got one extremely diligent enforcement officer in our area, and we're getting an awful lot of things being signed off that haven't even appeared on the list, so, which is a bit frustrating because we didn't even know they were happening in the first place. But we're very grateful to him. But so we could do with a new enforcement list. I've got one comment on the action plan, and that's at 11.1, about negotiations of extension of time, and where applicable, monitoring out of time applications, or where an application is not put in on first time. Now, it's particularly on negotiations of extension of time, and this has been a theme of mine for a long time, that wherever an extension of time is negotiated, that should appear on the webpage along with the email from the applicant agreeing to that extension of time, or an email from our officer agreeing to an extension of time from the applicant because they need to submit a new drawing or something like that. But it's always been my belief that were we to be audited by PINS or somebody who might audit us, we could get into trouble on the figures that we put forward for timely decisions if that information does not appear on the website. So I'm saying this in public because I really want it to happen, and I think it's something that should be happening. So if that section of the report could be amended accordingly, I'd be very grateful. Does anybody else have any comments? Oh, Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah, thank you. Just picking up again on the comments about the website, if I may respectfully suggest the model of Devon County Council's planning application web pages are very helpful because they've got tabs on the different sections. Maybe that's what you were referring to anyway, but it is really helpful. You can actually specifically look at all the public views, all this, whatever. And the other thing, just to pick up as well on what you were just saying about the enforcement reports, now we're going back to face-to-face parish council meetings, parish councils are all saying, well, why aren't we getting them? Because to be honest, it would be helpful if they just got a note to say, we aren't doing them at the moment, rather than people thinking they haven't received something.
No, I think perhaps that's an action that Mr. Cole can take back to get. I have mentioned it to Helen, but we haven't had any, and she was looking into it. But I think now we've got somebody standing in level 4, we really ought to be getting that monthly report, starting at the beginning of October, please. They've got 10 days to sort it out. Yeah. And thank you, Helen, for your help. Right, yes. Councillor Aston.
In all, we've had our meeting with enforcement, with Helen, and it was quite productive, and she's now starting to tick off some of those on our list. But my understanding is that enforcement actually got to the point where they've stopped the list getting any longer, and they're now starting to eat into the backlog. Is that correct?
Helen, do you want to talk on?
We're kind of at standstill point, so it's not getting any bigger, but at the moment, unfortunately, it's not coming down as quickly as we would like, purely because we've got 3 brand new members of the team who've never worked in planning enforcement anymore. Before. They're doing really well, but it's just taking a bit longer than we would hope. And we still have 1 member of the team off poorly, but hopefully he will be back shortly.
So there's your answer for the moment. Councillor Baldry, did you?
No, I was only going to speak specifically about recommendation 3. I know that it is a recommendation for council, but I fully support this 171,900. We need the additional temporary resource.
Yeah, we do. It is only temporary, but hopefully it should help to clear some of the backlogs. I think the problem is with having temporary officers that when they leave, they always leave unfinished applications behind. And then that starts another whole kind of backlog situation because somebody's got to pick them up and to turn them and get the reports out. But anyway, we shall be keeping a much closer eye on this, and there will be a further report coming forward. If there aren't any more questions or comments,
Chair, I've just got one point. I recognise that a lot of timescales put on here. I would much prefer to see those timescales sort of achieved ahead of time rather than being a target in a lot of areas. And I think, the problem is people say, oh, well, that's not until X date. And I'd like to see it pulled forward, particularly with regard to sort of enforcement. And I agree with Councillor Baldry about the problems with some enforcement areas. And I know that in the leaders' ward, which is mine as well, we have managed to address a lot of cases and got them closed. But there are still a number of cases that have been sitting out there for a long time, a number of years, and it's almost an apparent belief amongst the community that enforcement doesn't have teeth and don't really want to deal with it. And I'd like to see those ones particularly focused on so that they can be dealt with and dealt with robustly. And I'd say that also there is an element that has been touched on here is the link between enforcement and legal, and the ability for legal to actually back up and get the documents out there and get that dealt with. And I know there have been cases that have slipped and have been slowed because of, I would say, a lack of legal response, but a lack of resources there. And I think that's important. But I think the thing that is important, now we've got this, and I do welcome it, I really like to see this steam ahead with it and really move ahead of some of these targets so that we actually do have a planning and enforcement system which can't be criticised and is actually serving the community out there. And at the moment, it isn't for a recognised number of reasons, but we really do need to move this forward. But, this is a step forward and it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, Councillor Long, I would endorse everything you say. And in defence of enforcement, I know that some of the problems are not caused by enforcement. There have been delays in the legal department, which you and I know about. But you and I are also quite good at sort of sticking pins in them when they're not moving fast enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So. We do need one.
Yes, if I might say, so this is clearly the first report. We are very aware of all those wider implications, and I think the report's very clear that we will bring back a further report. It will tie up all of those issues in terms of all of the other services that support the front end DM service, and that will include the legal aspect bit. We want to fix this once and for all. We want a steadfast focus on it, and we want to make sure that all of the parts of the council that support the front end delivery of the development management service work effectively. So we're very much focusing on this as a team planning and around, Chairman, and that will be our focus. And you have my promise and Mr. Drew's promise that I'm on his behalf, that we will continue to focus on it steadfastly.
Yes, I mean, I didn't want to particularly single out legal, but clearly there is a problem with internal consultees in general. And I put legal in that category when they need to help the planners. And so this is being looked at holistically across the council. But there are a number of structural problems which I think need ironing out, and those will be part of a later report. Yes, Mr. Powell would like to comment. Please do.
Thank you. Chair, just one comment around, specifically around enforcement. Helen alluded to the fact that we've got a brand new team effectively. So we've not done the work with as yet with that team because they were literally bedding into their roles. We've actually got that date set aside for 27th of September, where we've got Paz going down to meet the new team, and then we'll look at the processes and look at what is best practice, and what we can learn from that, and then implement any proposed changes at that stage. And then there'll be a separate report to the back around enforcement and progress in that regard.
Well, let's hope they're all naturals, like one of the enforcement officers we take on recently, because he really is an absolute star. Right. Okay, so if there's no further discussion on that one, we will pass to the vote on this one. Executive, are you happy to accept the recommendations in this paper?
That's
including the extra cost? Thank you. And we will move on now to the Policy House report. Which is in the extra papers. Bolton House accommodation usage. Now, this is kind of a multifaceted report. There has been quite a lot of improvement work going on in the old house, that is this part of the building, because I think it's pretty obvious that the vaccination centre is going to be in the Agile area for some time to come. And on top of that, we have had a number of requests for extra for accommodation to be used in this building by outside organisations. With so many officers still working from home or working partly from home, then there probably is a need for our officers to be able to work around parts of the old house. Now, the system at the moment is that they can book a seat in a number of rooms that are now available to work in. And that's what officers are doing when they need to come in. I think as time goes on, we will see more officers coming into the building, but I think it is good that as much of this complex can be used as possible, and therefore the minimum amount of work which is being done to refurbish the old house and make it comfortable for officers to come work in is a good idea. It is a shame in many ways that the Agile area isn't being used by officers, but in the present circumstances, I can't see that Agile area ever being fully occupied as it was if officers got to social distance at 1 metre, because it would not be easy to accommodate them on the bench desks as they were. In addition to that, there is the question of the council chamber. Now, the council chamber is undergoing quite a radical refit. And this all started out with the air handling system, which I think we have all known for ages was absolutely rubbish, because either you could have it on and be either baked or freezing, but you couldn't hear what anybody was saying because it was so noisy, or you could have it off and be baked or freezing. So depending on what the weather was doing outside. So that was really essential, because we need to have fresh air being brought into that chamber under the present circumstances. And I've also been very keen for a long time that we should have an adequate PA system that allows us to stream meetings in a modern way, because I think it's going to be some time before members of the public can attend a meeting just to sit there and listen to it. And actually, why would they want to do that if they can watch it on their screen in the comfort of their own home? People who are actually asking a question or participating in the meeting, we will try to accommodate them as much as possible. But we think that a strict council chamber will be able to accommodate 40 plus people at 1 metre distancing, which will be all council members plus essential staff. And when we know about it, members of the public who need to attend to comment. And meanwhile, they can be accommodated in a different room with streaming, as is happening today for people who are not able to be accommodated in this room. Now, all this obviously is quite expensive, but fortunately we do have some money to tap into this. And it may seem like a major expenditure at this time when we shouldn't be spending money, but I think what is important is that we should emphasise it is actually important to be spending money. That council chamber has had no money spent on it for probably the best part of 35 or 40 years. And so this investment will see us being a modern council, delivering democracy to our residents properly for a long time to come. I'm anticipating that what we're doing at the moment will hold us good for the next, at least for the next 15 or 20 years. And the IT equipment will no doubt be updated as and when, but that is always, as we know, a huge expenditure. But I do think this is a necessary spend to bring democracy at South Hams into the 21st century and to ensure that our residents can see what we're up to. It makes us far more accountable to them than we will ever have been before. Now, we are streaming this meeting today, but I'm not pretending that what we're doing is as brilliant as it could be. And I think we will find with the new system, they will get a much better relay of what the meeting, how the meeting's happening, who's speaking, and what's going on. So I really welcome these developments. And I even welcome the spend, which is coming out of the money that has become available for dishing out all the government grants. So it's burdens funding we receive. So it's not coming directly out of any current council reserves. And it could be argued that it could have been spent on something else. But I actually feel that in the circumstances, this is a really good way of spending it, because we need to be accountable to our residents. And there are lots of things they want to follow us on. And, you know, with social media going on, everybody wants to be up to date on what's happening at the very moment it happens. And this is a way that we're able to present that to our residents. So, first of all, are there any questions on the paper? Councillor Baldwin.
Under background at 2.1, it says prior to the pandemic, the council decided to retain Fullerton House as its home and base of operations and democracy. I cannot recall that decision coming to full council, and the implication is it went to full council. And someone please send me a copy of the minute where it was agreed, and if it was agreed, I would have voted against.
Councillor Baldry. I think we would all have voted against it, but as the situation was presented to the accommodation working group, as I recall, there was very little other alternative, because we couldn't obtain a sufficient capital sum from this building to be able to move anywhere else, and there is nowhere else suitable in the district.
I understand that, Leader, but the implication of that was it was a council decision. That's what how 2.1 reads.
Yes, okay, well,
Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Brooks got something to
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor. Forgive me if I've led you astray. It was a recommendation from the accommodation working group taken to the executive, which was accepted by the executive, or it was passed by the executive.
And I spoke against that executive, but it was not a council decision.
well, maybe that should be corrected to being an executive decision.
It would have gone the executive.
Well,
minutes
the
would have gone
minutes
to
would have gone
council.
through council, yes. So,
Well, I'm sorry, we're not in debate yet, but I'm just going to say I am not convinced that this is the right location. I think we should be in a purpose-built council offices, possibly shared with West Devon and possibly built in Sherwood or Ivorwich.
I'm sure none of us would disagree with you, Councillor Baldry, on that.
I would
But it's not
equally,
possible.
I would equally not disagree with you,
Well,
but it has been seen to be too difficult and too capital intensive to be able to do it. So if you'd like to go win the lottery for us and donate the proceeds, we happily consider it.
Leader, it was a question. If you want to go into debate, I will say if you allow me to have 10% of the proceeds, I reckon you can flog this place off.
Yeah, you can flog it.
Right, okay. Right, has anybody else got any questions? Councillor Hodgson.
It wasn't really a question, it was really a comment, so maybe
Well,
I'll
can you
just
wait
wait for a
till we
second.
the recommendations then? Councillor Snowden.
Yeah, mine's probably a comment as well.
Okay, so.
I've got a question, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Good question, well done.
Okay, missed all the time, but that's me. Have we got a completion date on this one, Leader?
We are sincerely hoping that it will be completed by the February budget meeting. And until then, we're going to have to use Kilworthy Park. And as a result, you have been sent amended timings for council meetings at Kilworthy Park because of the short days between November and February. I think the other meeting that's going to have to be held over there will be the joint development management and open view and scrutiny budget meeting, because there isn't a room big enough here to accommodate everybody. But it does mean development management meetings are going to have to continue to be held here, which is not ideal, but we have been doing it for the last several months, and so it is possible to continue doing that until the council chamber is ready. But it will be a much more flexible space, and I'm sure that each committee that uses it will find out what the best arrangement of tables and chairs is for their own particular committee, because different committees have different requirements. So that's another advantage, because it was hard enough just standing up and sitting down in those chairs in the old council chamber, and moving the tables around. You needed Jeff Capes to come and help you, didn't you? So I do think that, moving into a much more flexible space will be much better, with flexible PA systems, will be much better for all the committees concerned. Right, so I'm happy to move the recommendations. Recommendation 1 talks about the greater transparency of our democratic processes. So it notes the ongoing modernisation and uplift of the old house and the chamber, and the specific furniture and furnishings are to be delegated to the head of assets in consultation with the leader and portfolio holders. So Councillor Bastow and I have got a nice job on hand. And so the audiovisual system is estimated at £100,000, which is from the Burdens funding, which we received from government. And the final recommendation is to endorsing the continual strategy of increasing the rental income from Pollerton House by securing lettings throughout the building to meet the demands of businesses and partners, including areas previously used by council staff and members. But obviously that can't happen until the vaccination centre moves out. And we don't yet know when that's going to be. They're here at least until the end of the year, but I suspect it could be longer with the new dose of vaccinations or booster vaccinations that's coming through. So, right, so I move those recommendations. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you. I think Councillor Baldry just wanted.
I'll put my name.
Yes, you did.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just think. I'll remember.
So, does anybody want to make any comments on this paper now? Yes, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Yeah, I do actually remember this coming to council, because I remember some flippant comments about the most central at the prison. So it's like, how do we remember minutes of meetings? Idiotic extras. But anyway, yeah, I do remember that coming through. And I don't assume for 1 minute that I would actually support us moving from Fullerton, because actually it's like, people talk about buying a new car to sort of, which is going to be low energy use. It's better to use what you have well and perhaps less. And we can certainly do that with the building because of bringing more people in. I noticed that we're not getting any income from the pandemic vaccination scheme. Well, that's absolutely fine.
It's minimal.
Yeah, but, it's not really covering what it's potentially could otherwise be. But at the same time, there's probably not that many people wanting to move around into different premises at the moment anyway. But the potential for this place to actually house more people, especially now we've got that much more hybrid model, which I think is really, really good, actually. I mean, if there's one good outcome of the pandemic, it will be that sort of rapid change and people really being okay with working out of the small one's bedroom or something. But I think it's, we potentially here, we're holding a wonderful building. If we sold this building, I think it would be probably, it wouldn't last very long. It might be ideal as a good hotel, but it's, whatever. I think the potential for us to stay here is and hold that as it is. But what I was going to say, rolling on from that, through the summer there have been issues around the number of people that can use these rooms for weddings. And I think that, we've been under the registrar from Devon County Council, who's been quite sticky about sticking to very small numbers. And I think I would like to see separation from that, because they have not been actually completely up to date with what the current government compliance requirements are. And I think, personally, I've dealt with quite a lot of heartbreak with people contacting me and saying, please, can we just have an extra granny in the room for the wedding that people have perhaps waited over a year from. So I would just ask for that to be taken on board as well. But other than that, I welcome the report. Thank you.
I'm sure that can be looked into, Councillor Hodgson, and we'll see. I think the numbers regulations are letting up now. I'm not sure what they are for weddings now. Does anybody know?
Still on the door, I think.
Well, I
think, Chairman, it's up to the venue.
It's up to the venue, right? Well, perhaps the venue could be a little bit more flexible on that, please.
So, they set their own, they do their own risk assessment, and it's their own operational risk assessment that's determining this issue. That's not to say that we can't ask them about whether or not it's the right time to review it. Just an extra I have to say.
Thank you.
I think that's also quite important for our wedding lettings as well, that we have the maximum number that we're able to accommodate. Any more comments on this? Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I have to say, disappointed that by the sound of it, we won't be using the agile area, which was, a lot of time and effort was put into creating that. And when you went up there, when a lot of staff were working, it certainly made us look as though we were a modern, forward-thinking council. And I'm sorry that we possibly we're going to go back to members of staff, in small rooms, crammed in, appearing their own desks and computers, and I think we should be looking for somewhere more modern. But having said that, so we're talking about doing up the old. We're talking about the old house. Personally, I'd like some sort of delineation as to what current, what's old house and what's new house. Where's the?
If you look at the plans, it shows you.
Right. Well, okay. Is there?
Yeah, there are plans at the end of the report.
Okay, fine. Right. I didn't scroll as far as that. So, just with a minor point, possibly, but with regard to the fixtures and fittings in the chamber. Speaking as an ordinary member, I feel a bit disappointed that, as to what people are going to have to sit on for possibly the next 40 years. It's going to be delegated to one or two people. I think other members should have input into that. And if we're disposing of the fixtures and fittings that are in there, then they should be auctioned off or something. They shouldn't be just oiked out and skip.
I think that is the usual procedure when
well, I hope so.
furniture is taken out of the council chamber. So can we look into that, Mr. Brooke, please? Or, giving members the first bite. I think it would be instructive to circulate a photograph that the Chief Executive had of the inside of the council chamber before it was stripped out. And I think if you look at it, you will see just how dated it looked. In retrospect, I don't know if we thought that when we went in there. When you look at this photo, you would think that. Now, I think Mr. Debate would like to say something, please, so
If I
please.
could, thank you, Lisa. So firstly, just to reassure Councillor Smith, we absolutely are making use of the agile area, but we're only making use of part of it at the moment, and the other part of it remains in use for staff, very much able to use that space, but there is a part of it which we have let temporarily to support the enormous national effort on vaccination, which clearly we as officers absolutely behind, and you as members I know are keen to support as well. As soon as that's finished, of course, hopefully towards the end of the year, beginning of next year, we'll have that space back and we'll absolutely take that back in and make good use of it. The whole philosophy of this report is to make sure that we make the very best use of all of the available space within the building. We have a very important listed building which we need to maintain and enhance and improve. The proposals in the report are absolutely aligned with your ambitions as a council, once government allows us to do so, to move to a hybrid system of decision making, thus the importance of reinvesting in the audio-visual, and we'll be able to make better use both for officers and you as members of the old part of the building as well. So I think what I would say, Leader, is we have tried to look at this in the round rather than looking at what elements of it. We're taking the whole bit. And if you think about the income that will potentially be generated from some of the newer parts of the building, that can also go into the reinvestment back into the building. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, sorry, I keep commenting on, but can we make sure that there is an elevated area for the leaders of the council and the officers, because it's very difficult to see if we're in, it needs a slight elevation on where the leaders stand.
We do need to have a dais for the front bench to sit on, if you like, so that the members can see them and they can see the members. I agree, at the moment at Kilworthy it is quite difficult to do that. Yes, I think, a movable platform is quite an easy thing.
Just don't put it all in a pulpit.
Yeah, but it will have to be movable so that we can move it around as required. Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Within the accommodation working group, we looked very carefully at either staying in Fullerton or going, and I really didn't want to stay in Fullerton. As you can imagine, the drive every time I come up here is 45 minutes on a good day. So I was one of those very keen to move to Sherford or Ivy Bridge, but economically it wouldn't have been the best decision for the council, and that was why it was decided we stay at Fullerton House. I do think there are a couple of things. We have an old building here, it's listed. We haven't as a council looked after it very well, and I think we should be setting an example to residents who have listed buildings, and I'm glad to see that we are going to get a work programme together to update the building. I mean, this room alone, which is magnificent, but actually I don't know what it looks like through the live stream, but sat in here, it's really not looking like it should look, and I think we owe it to this place to get it looking as it should. With regards to the new equipment going into the chamber, I welcome it. We are a modern council. We want to be inclusive. We want residents to be able to connect with us and listen to what we're saying, and that we need to invest in the technology to be able to do that. The only caveat I have to that is I do think sometimes residents would like to actually sit in a meeting, especially if it's a hot topic in their area. And I do ask that we consider as a council moving forward that if we have an item or maybe a planning application that's a big planning application for an area, will have a significant impact on that area, then we look to take the meeting to that ward or town, so that the members of that town can be involved in that meeting, and if they have got a long way to travel and it's not possible for them to get here, I think that is a really, really modern way of working, I believe, and that would be inclusive for everybody. So we need to think about how we take meetings out to residents. And I don't say we need to do it for a lot of meetings, but there are some meetings where really important decisions are made about an area. And I think those residents have a right to not just look through a live stream or listen, but to actually be present at that meeting so they can feel the atmosphere in the meeting and feel the debate.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions on that will be how portable the PA system that we're looking at is. Can anybody comment on that? Does anybody know who's sitting in this room? Is it one we can move around? Mr. Powell does.
Yeah, I think the system that we're going for in the main chamber will be fixed, but the mics will be movable.
Yeah.
We're also bringing a new system to operate within here, which I think someone could transfer across. I'll check that, and then we could also invest a little bit more.
Yeah, I know exactly to what you're referring.
The two systems are, you're quite right, the one in the chamber is fixed, but the one in here, the reason it's been picked is it can be literally picked up and it can go anywhere. So that's why, I think that's why it will give us a better chance of being able to go out to our residents.
All right. Councillor Baston.
Just a couple of points, which Councillor Hopkins raised. One year we did actually take our executive meetings out to the towns. We went around various towns, and I don't think we got any more people attending to listen to us. Yeah, anyway.
It very much depends on having a good PA system to take with you, because otherwise, even the members of the committee can't hear what the other members are saying, let alone the people sitting in the audience.
And the second point.
Yeah, and the second point. Sorry.
Many of these rooms are magnificent, and I think it's just a coat of paint really would make a world of difference in here. I mean, you can see it peeling up in the top corner there, and that's all it needs, I think. But this room could be, well, and is a truly magnificent room. And I remember attending a wedding in here, and I have to quickly add it wasn't mine. And it did create a lovely atmosphere for the wedding, because this is a beautiful room. And we do need to take more care of it.
I'm just looking at the linings falling out of those curtains.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you. I think this report will set our position as a council with regard to this building very clearly, and that means that we'll be able to love this building again as it needs to be loved. So absolutely, we will take on board your points, Councillor Basto, and redecoration, refurbishment and repair of the rest of the building as is necessary is what we plan to do. And I think that's clearly set out in the report, so thank you for your comments.
Right. Yes, Councillor Baldry.
First of all, an apology. For me, this, as in paragraph 2.1, the ever-efficient Mr. White has drawn my attention to the fact that it did come to full council, and on the 20th of April last year, it did go to full council, but also there is a footnote that said Councillor Baldry requested it be noted that he did not support the proposal. Thank you, Mr. White, very much for that.
Just added that.
I'm consistent. But in conclusion, just to say, I fully support this recommendation. I think it is in the best interest of democracy and transparency, and is the interest of all residents of the South Downs.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor
Thank you, Leader. If someone had said to me 18 months, 2 years ago that I would like virtual meetings, I would have said no way. Not in my council lifetime, because I'm an IT dinosaur, unlike most of you. I'm a complete dinosaur. But remote meetings and hybrid meetings, in my view, are the way forward. This building is a huge asset to Southampton Council and to all our communities, whether it's Walwell, Kingsbridge, Thomas Ivybridge, etc. And they must have chosen all those years ago why this was the building for Southampton. I don't know what it was. But it is an asset. And I think by putting this investment into the building, we will be able to make more money from this building, because it is, as Hilary said, and I think Karen would like this as their wedding venue when Hilary pops a question. But this is the most fantastic building. And I was in the care room last week and I was shocked at how tatty it had looked. It really did look run down and tatty. And if you want it as a wedding venue or for community groups from the Totnes area or even Dartmouth area or that South Hams area, this can really be a hub again. And I think by putting this money in and the investment into it, we can really do that. I trust Judy and Hilary for whatever seats we're going to be sitting on. I have total faith in our leader and deputy leader. I've been here for over 20 years, and except for the agile area, we've never spent any money on it at all. And the taxpayers of Southampton have got to realise that. We've never spent any money on it in over 20 years. This carpet is exactly the same as when I came in my 30s. But it really does need some investment. I fully support this. I think we must promote it as an area that can be used by external groups. That is a really important thing. Agile working, yeah, that's the way forward. I had 4 meetings yesterday afternoon. I was able to go one after the other, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I was at home, fantastic. I didn't have to spend all that time in coming to Totnes, which takes 30-35 minutes from where we are. So I think it's really good investment. But we must make certain that we actually promote the building once it's up and running, once as we've got it, as we want it. The only other thing I would just add, yes, these tables were bought some years ago because the tables that used to be in here were equally as unuseful as the ones in the chamber chairs. So yeah, I do fully support it.
Yeah, just to reassure members, we will get chairs that are comfortable and stackable. But you know, a chair is a chair. So a chair designed by 31 people is likely to be a bit like a camel, you know, a horse designed by the museum. Yes, Councillor.
But I'll just point to the chairs. These are fine. The ones in the council chamber are terrible.
Yeah.
They're not good for women because they're just too deep. You end up with a back achy back. Just
yeah, well, the other thing
pass
is
back
that the webbing had gone on them, so it was
I
won't say what it's like
yeah.
on, but you know what I'm going to say.
Maybe that's because it was the ones up the front. But no, I was just going to say in terms of, I did say this at a meeting fairly recently, an informed conversation about this. I do think if there's any way we could get natural light into the chamber, it would really make a difference. I mean, that's what's actually lovely about this room to be. And I mean, we're actually going to keep the light out because of the screen.
It is a problem though, because it's built as a bomb shelter and it's got rooms on top of it. So it does actually make it quite difficult to get
Yeah, but I just think maybe things are shiftable because it would make it actually probably more a venue that we could rent out.
Yeah, I do think though that the lighting is much better than it used to be, and you can get LEDs that imitate daylight. So I think that's what we need to be looking at, because I think the chances of anybody being able to drill through those walls are fairly limited. So I don't want to.
Yeah, anyway, I just wanted to put a plea for that because I think it makes a difference to our health and well-being in a meeting all day.
You know, need to be less bomb off them now to get through those walls. Right, and I think it's meant to be bomb-proof, isn't it? So even that may not work. Right, I think we've spent long enough on this report. I think we'll pass to voting on the recommendations. We've discussed this quite thoroughly. Members, are you happy to endorse these recommendations?
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, so
Can we have a 2-minute break?
Do you want to
start Wednesday?
Yes, we've had 2 hours, so let's have a 5-minute break. Right. Good idea.
Coffee machine.